Hey guys, Zom Fox here, and today we're going to be talking about just some pretty big news stories that came out the past couple days regarding the UFL. A couple of these are some big signings, one that's a huge shock, one that's just an insanely good signing. A player finally signing to his contract after being, selected in the dispersal draft process, as well as a couple other big stories, including a potential major injury to a huge player, as well as a bit of a sad tale as well. We've got a lot to talk about, so without further ado, let's get started by looking at the transactions from a couple days ago on March 19th. Now, this is where we see the first one, which I'll get to in a bit, and that's Taco Charlton signing with the Stallions. Now, Mark Milton is the lesser of them all. He was a cornerback that was with the Panthers during the offseason this past year. He goes to San Antonio. This is a decent move, get him some defensive help. But in terms of the bigger things, Willie Arbery is on the IR. He is a massive, massive player to go on the IR. This is a dude who was very key on both the championship-winning Stallions teams. So seeing him be put on IR is pretty sad, but it's the main reason why the Stallions signed the guy they did. Now, Christian Sam being put on the suspended list, as I talked about earlier, doesn't really matter. If you haven't watched it, you can click the top right of the video to go look at the video I posted earlier today where I looked at all the cuts from the Renegades, Defenders, and Roughnecks, where he was one of the players who was cut. Now, Natai Rogers, this is a really good signing. This is a dude who was a massive player in getting Mark Thompson his OPOY, as he was a starter for 9 games this past season with the Gamblers. He had actually already been, selected and all that. He just hadn't signed his contract yet, but he signed it just a few days before the season started. Now let's look at Taco Charlton. This is a massive signing that just nobody saw coming. This is a former first-round pick only back in 2017. That stacked draft class he was a first-round pick in. Now, issues ended up happening early on in his career that kind of derailed it. He had a pretty bad shoulder injury that had to get surgery. There were some issues with coaching staff as well, him and the coaches, which essentially made him leave Dallas after just a couple seasons. And after that, he really didn't do a ton aside from that 1 year in Miami. He did, put in some decent work. But this is a dude who, after his rookie season, never played in 16 games again. And, well, this past season didn't actually play in any game. But now he has a shot to try and rebound back into the NFL by being good with the Stallions. I assume he probably ends up making the roster. He is signed clearly as the Willie Arbery replacement, and I assume he does probably make it, as this is a signing that nobody saw coming. Former first-round pick in Taco Charlton is just really random. This is a cool signing. Hopefully he ends up, playing pretty well. We saw Robert Kimdichie with the USFL this past season try to sign him with the Panthers that end up not making the roster. Maybe things bode well for this time. We'll see. Now, in terms of the sad news, we have the Cam Sutton incident. For those of you who don't know, Detroit Lions cornerback Cameron Sutton is, at least as I'm recording this, if I'm not mistaken, is still missing. He has a warrant out for his arrest because I believe he potentially strangled a woman, and it's pretty awful stuff that he's accused of. But the issue is that Cam Sutton of the Memphis Showboats is, as you can imagine, getting harassed. This is a dude who did nothing wrong, at least we know of, but this is a guy who just wrong name at the wrong time. He's gotten a bunch of hate on X because, if I'm not mistaken, Cameron Sutton actually doesn't have a Twitter account, but Cam Sutton does, so a lot of people I've seen in the comments of his stuff actually thought that he was the Cameron Sutton of the Lions, when he's not. He's a tight end. So he ended up putting a couple tweets up about that, and it's a pretty big deal. There's a lot of hate that he got, so hopefully that all gets resolved for him, and hopefully, we find out what actually happened with Cameron Sutton. Because, again, the accusations are pretty terrible. But at least for Cam Sutton of the Showboats, hopefully this all kind of just goes away pretty soon for him. Hopefully, stops getting all the hate he was getting early on for literally just having Cam Sutton as his name. We'll see. Now, the next thing to talk about is the QB1 for the Roughnecks. As I alluded to earlier today in the other video I posted, James Larson, Curtis Johnson, we now know that Jarrett Garantino is the starting quarterback for the Houston Roughnecks. This is a pretty big shock, as a lot of people expected Reed Sinnett to be it. Now, we don't know for sure who's going to be the backup quarterback. It's either going to be Sinnett or Henderson, but Garantino is the starter. Now, this is one that a lot of people naturally don't like. A lot of people really didn't like him back in college, and this is definitely one of the riskier moves we've seen in the entire offseason. As I've talked about many times, the Roughnecks are a very weird team because of just how they're constructed. And having him at quarterback, we'll see how it works. Now, the other story is about the Roughnecks is Mark Thompson. Now, I will say, from everything we've seen, it doesn't look like he's going to miss time. We can't say that for sure, but essentially, he had some sort of knee injury during his time with Arlington when they were doing some like joint practices, which is why he tweeted something about Arlington having a terrible field. Essentially, he got a knee sprain, and at least a couple days ago, he was, have x-rays of it done, but we haven't heard anything yet, but it doesn't seem like it's, a like season-ending injury like Abram Smith. There were reports that he might miss some time, which he's basically said isn't going to happen. So he might not miss time, but he's at least going to be playing a bit banged up, which is a pretty big deal. We just saw Abram Smith tear his ACL, and if we were to lose Thompson as well, that'd be a even bigger blow than Smith, because now you're missing both your two top running backs. So hopefully it's all, just a knee sprain that's pretty minor. Hopefully it heals before the season starts, as we're less than 10 days away. Naturally, just keep on following the story because we don't know everything for sure, but that's what it is at the moment. Now, once we get past that, we go to the Brian Lewerke signing. This is one that we heard about. Davis Cheek ended up retiring for the Panthers, and so they brought back Lewerke to be the replacement. Not a shock. He's spent time with this team. This was just kind of we expected it, nothing else happened. But then, of course, we had the thing that came out earlier today, and that was that UFL games will be airing on SiriusXM. This is a pretty big deal. SiriusXM, a big broadcasting area, group radio kind of thing. And yes, they will be having the game. So if you have, in-car or streaming apps for it, you can now watch games or listen to games on SiriusXM. This is a pretty big deal. Just another came out of nowhere thing, but it's definitely a pretty cool thing to see, so this is nice. Now we get to the last big signing, and that's Tim Ward. So, again, I talked about Tim Ward being a very surprising cut. As I said in that video, you're talking about the defenders who had a really great defensive line, but you kind of expected him to stay there. And also, Terrell Basham ended up getting put on the suspended list, so this is also kind of a replacement for him because he went to San Antonio. And you know where Tim Ward played last year? The Houston Roughnecks under Wade Phillips. So, yes, he is reunited with Wade Phillips, this time in San Antonio. Now, the whole thing with Wade and the Brahmas, and the reason why they've always been so low in power rankings, is because of the fact that it was the Gamblers team that stayed. All the Roughnecks players got put in the dispersal drafts, meaning that Wade could only bring back so many guys. And Tim Ward, along with like Trent Harris, were two of the big guys he ended up missing out on. But he now gets Ward back. I'm not surprised at all at this signing. Tim Ward only played basically half a season last year and looked pretty damn good in those games. This is a dude who did have 22 tackles, had 5 sacks in only 6 games. He was really good last year, and now he is back with Wade Phillips. Before the signing, the Brahmas were very much teetering on the 8th spot. This is the worst team in the league. I honestly think that even though this is, a defensive lineman, I think this is a signing that keeps them out of 8. I really do. This isn't a signing that's going to jump them up a bunch of spots, but this definitely moves them away from that 8th spot because this is a huge signing. You're getting a huge bit of help on your defensive line by getting one of the best defensive linemen that's now available. Even though there still are a couple other pretty big names out there, this is a guy that has experience with Wade Phillips, has proved to be really good under Wade Phillips, and overall is just a really good signing. So this is a good one. And so that'll do it for today's video. Again, this was kind of just recapping some news over the past couple days. Sorry for the pretty late upload. I was waiting for this, UFL comms to communications, announcement of what would happen today, March 21st, and I'm glad I did since I now got to find out about the Tim Ward signing. If you haven't seen the video, naturally go to the channel and click the I earlier in the video to go see the cuts for the 3 teams. Again, we're expecting another cut video tomorrow because it looks like the Brahmas are going to be announcing their final roster cuts. So be on the lookout for that. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell if you're new here. If you want to become a member and support the channel, you can click the link in the description or the join button to be a member for as low as $1 a month. And you all get exclusive perks, including emojis, a channel badge, sneak peeks to upcoming videos, and of course, 1 monthly non-UFL video. As always, have a great night.